Hey warriors, thanks for watching this video. In this video I want to talk about something that can be one of the strongest obstacles to us following Jesus with our whole hearts. It can be one of the most difficult obstacles to overcome, and often we don't really recognize it or see it, but if you fall into this fear, if you fall into this category, it can keep you, even for years, from fulfilling the mission that God has for you. It has to be addressed and it has to be conquered. So look with me. I want to show you just one verse from Luke chapter 23, verse 26. This is sort of inspired by a devotional by Oswald Chambers, as well as a sermon that I listened to recently from a pastor friend of mine. But I want to talk about the cost of following Jesus, the cost of following Jesus. But it might not be the traditional cost that you're thinking of, and yet this cost can keep us from fully following Jesus. Look at Luke chapter 23 and verse 26. In this passage, Jesus is being led away to his death. It is the time of his crucifixion. He's been condemned by Pilate, and he's being led away to die. And Jesus is, maybe he's struggling to carry the cross. Maybe he's falling under the weight of the cross. He's been severely beaten. He's been severely whipped. And so instead of trying to just keep getting Jesus to carry this cross, he can't carry it anymore, they grab a man who's just kind of passing through Jerusalem at that time. Look at Luke 23, verse 26. It says, "And when they led him away, they seized a man, Simon of Cyrene, coming in from the country, and placed on him the cross to carry behind Jesus." I want to talk about this fact of ministry, or this fact of even just following Jesus with all your heart. It's this, that when you choose to follow Jesus with all your heart, when you choose to pick up your cross and follow Christ, it will burden and sometimes injure the people around you. It will burden and in some ways maybe even injure the people around you. I remember growing up in a pastor's family, and my father being a pastor and working very hard as a pastor, and sort of the cost that his pastoral ministry had on my family. I remember nights when we'd be sitting at the dinner table, and my dad would be like, I gotta go, this person is in the hospital, and he'd just get up and leave, and we won't be able to have dinner. I remember times when my dad would be at a conference and be speaking for the weekend, and so he wasn't home. I remember people being in our home, or even staying with us, or visitor after visitor, and I'm just like, man, can we just be left alone and be a normal family? Sometimes I had these feelings, and there was a cost that came upon our family and upon the people that were close to my father, because he was a minister and because he was faithful to the gospel. And some people, as they are receiving this call from God to do ministry, or to go where God has called them to go, maybe to be a missionary, or maybe it's just like you following Jesus and you setting different standards. Maybe you're just telling your kids, like, no, you can't do sports. On Sunday, we're going to go to church. But there is always a cost to those who are close to you for following Christ. I think the most severe cost was to Jesus's disciples, to Jesus's family. Imagine his mother Mary literally watching her son be crucified. He didn't have to die. Jesus could have escaped it. He could have called the legions, but Jesus, following the perfect will of the Father, had to die, and his death and his losses and his pain produced incredible pain in the people around him. I remember one time in 2019 when I was doing a long fast, and I was losing a lot of weight, and my body was struggling, and my mother was looking at me, and she was almost begging me to stop my fast. She was like, "Samuel, you can't keep fasting. I'm really concerned about you." And I imagine she was anxious, and she wasn't sleeping at night sometimes, but I knew that God had called me to that thing, and so I had to stay steadfast. Maybe you're in a situation right now and God is calling you to something. Maybe it's going to take a loss of money, or maybe it's going to be very inconvenient. Maybe it will break the hearts of the closest people around you. But if God has called you to obey him, don't let the secondary cost, the cost to your family, the cost to your friends, if God has truly called you, don't go off and do something crazy and just abandon your family. But if God has called you to do something, maybe you do need to be distant from your family for a time. A lot of times following Jesus, actually doing what God says, is interpreted as selfishness. I'm going to say that again. Often following Christ is interpreted as selfishness. People will be like, God didn't actually tell you to do that. Why are you staying in the prayer closet and not coming out? Why are you giving away money when you could get your kids nicer clothes? Or you could take them to Disney World on a vacation, you never go on vacation, whatever. Like these accusations against you for things that you believe God is calling you to do. Selfishness and the calling of God are two different things, but when you live in the calling of God, people will accuse you of being selfish because you're actually putting God first instead of the people around you, and most people do not understand that. But if you can live your life in a way that obeys God without counting the secondary cost because you trust God, He will take care of all things. I was always okay, even though my dad wasn't there. God always worked something out, and if He wasn't able to be there, I had other mentors and friends, and I knew my dad loved me, and most of all, the most important inheritance He gave me, more than Him being at dinners, or Him buying me nicer clothes, or Him whatever being super dad, the best and most important gift that He ever gave me was the example of His unrelenting, uncompromising faith. Jesus says this, He says, seek first the kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. The evangelist Leonard Ravenhill grieved over the fact that he couldn't be with his family that often. He felt like the Lord had called him to travel around, and he preached all over the world in so many different pulpits, and he inspired and he led revival in so many places. He was incredibly gifted, but he wasn't able to be there for his boys. He said, I couldn't be there in person for my sons as much as I wanted to, but I prayed for them. How I prayed for them. I prayed for them hours. I don't know if he says hours, but he says he prays for them heavily every single day. He would pray for them. And he said, all of my boys turned out blessed, and they turned out well, and they turned out powerful men of God in the faith. And God took care of them because He, despite the cost to anyone around him, followed Jesus with all his heart. Follow Jesus no matter the cost to yourself or the cost to the people around you. And the Lord will care and provide and restore everything that is lost. Thank you for watching.